A former Gaming Commission compliance officer just revealed something that will fundamentally change slot machines in America, and casinos have been quietly fighting to keep this information from reaching the public until it's too late to matter. Starting in January 2026, every single slot machine in the United States will operate under a completely different set of federal regulations. And what I've learned from industry insiders about how casinos are responding right now, in 2024, should concern anyone who's ever put money into one of these machines. This isn't speculation or rumor. This is documented federal law that's already passed, and the implementation clock is ticking. What you're about to hear could genuinely change how you think about gambling forever. A, because the transparency requirements buried in this legislation are unlike anything the casino industry has faced in 30 years. Here's what's coming first, and why casino executives have been calling emergency board meetings about it. Under the new federal mandate, every slot machine must display its actual return-to-player percentage in a format that's visible while you're seated at the machine, not buried in a menu, not hidden in fine print on a glass panel somewhere, right there on the screen where you can see it while you're deciding whether to keep playing. The specific language requires machines to show something like this. This machine returns $87 for every $100 wagered over time. The exact number, right there. Every single Class 3 gaming device in every casino operating under federal gaming regulations. Now, I want you to understand why this matters. A gaming industry consultant named Sarah spent 18 months working on compliance testing for major manufacturers preparing for this deadline. According to her documentation, internal casino reports show executives are projecting revenue decreases between 15 and 20% once players can actually see these return rates displayed in real time. Think about what that tells you. The casino industry genuinely believes that if you knew what you were actually getting back, you'd play differently. You'd make different choices. And they've spent millions lobbying to delay or modify this requirement because they know transparency costs them money. Well, but that's just the first change coming in 2026. Wait until you hear what they're doing with progressive jackpots. And if you think displaying RTP percentages is controversial, machine manufacturers are actually suing the Federal Gaming Commission over this next requirement, and what they're trying to keep hidden affects every single progressive jackpot machine in America. Here's what most players don't understand about progressive jackpots. Right now, when you're sitting at a machine with one of those massive jackpot displays showing hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, you have absolutely no way of knowing what percentage of your bet actually contributes to that number climbing higher. The casino doesn't have to tell you. The manufacturer doesn't have to tell you. Yet you see that meter going up and you assume a significant portion of your wager is funding that jackpot. According to industry documentation, the actual standard across most major progressive systems is somewhere between 1 and 3%. That means if you're betting $1 per spin, somewhere between 1 cent and 3 cents is actually going toward the jackpot you're chasing. The rest is immediate casino profit. The new law changes this completely. Starting in January 2026, every progressive machine must display the exact percentage of each wager that contributes to the progressive meter. The specific text will read something like, 1.2% of your wager contributes to this jackpot. The actual number, right there on the screen, and this is where the lawsuits come in. A former slot director named Michael managed progressive systems at a major Las Vegas Strip property for 11 years. Based on his testimony in public gaming commission hearings, he documented internal executive meetings where casino management discussed what he called genuine panic about this disclosure requirement. He witnessed players over the years betting $200, $300 per spin on linked progressive games, and the internal data showed these players genuinely believed the majority of their wager was funding the jackpot pool. When Michael's team analyzed actual contribution rates for their floor, they found their Megabucks-style wide-area progressive machines contributed exactly 1.2% to the meter. Everything else went straight to the casino as hold percentage. The lawsuit filed by 3 major slot manufacturers argues this disclosure reveals proprietary information about game design and profit margins. What that really means is they don't want players doing the math and realizing how much money disappears into casino profit instead of the jackpot they're chasing. Before I continue, I need to ask, have you ever hit a progressive jackpot? Let me know in the comments, and if you're finding this information valuable, please subscribe because what's coming in the rest of this law is even more shocking. But here's where the legislation gets really interesting. They're actually going to regulate how often bonus features can trigger and ban one of the most psychologically manipulative programming techniques the industry has used for decades. Now, while you might think knowing the actual return percentage and seeing how little of your money funds those progressive jackpots would be enough transparency, but this next requirement targets the psychological manipulation I've been warning about for years. And according to former Gaming Commission members who worked on drafting this legislation, this provision right here is what the casino industry lobbied hardest against during the entire approval process. Revelation number 3. The bonus trigger frequency requirement. Under current regulations, slot manufacturers can program bonus features to trigger at whatever frequency they want, and they have absolutely no obligation to tell you anything about it. You could be playing a machine where the free spins bonus triggers once every 500 spins, and you'd have no way of knowing that until you'd already burned through your entire bankroll chasing it. The 2026 law changes this completely. Every machine must display the average bonus trigger frequency calculated based on the actual programming, not some theoretical math that sounds better for marketing. The display will read something like bonus feature triggers approximately once every 240 spins. The real number, right there on the screen before you start playing. Here's why this matters more than you might realize. A former Game King programmer who worked on bonus feature development for 8 years documented in Gaming Commission testimony how manufacturers intentionally kept trigger frequencies obscure specifically because transparency would change player behavior. His internal development documents showed deliberate design choices to make bonus frequencies feel unpredictable and exciting rather than mathematically consistent. Casino player tracking data he reviewed showed that players stayed at machines significantly longer when they had no frame of reference for how rare bonus triggers actually were. Once players understood they might need 300 spins to hit a feature, they made different decisions about how much money to risk. But here's where the legislation gets even more aggressive. Revelation number 4. The near-miss display prohibition. This bans one of the most insidious psychological tricks the industry has ever deployed. Near-miss programming is when the reels are deliberately weighted to show jackpot symbols just above or just below the pay line at rates far higher than the actual probability of hitting them. You see those 777s land one position off the pay line, and your brain interprets that as almost winning, which triggers the same dopamine response as an actual win and keeps you playing. A Gaming Commission investigator named Jennifer spent 14 months in 2024 testing machines across 43 different casinos in 6 states. Her documented findings showed that out of 47 machines tested, 39 displayed jackpot symbols on positions adjacent to the pay line at rates between 400 and 800% higher than the actual reel strip probability would produce randomly. Her reports, which became part of the public record during legislative hearings, led directly to this ban provision. Starting in 2026, machines cannot display any symbols on adjacent positions that don't match the actual weighted probability of those symbols appearing on the physical or virtual reel strips. The implementation challenge here is massive. This isn't just adding a display screen. This requires complete reel strip reprogramming for thousands of existing machines currently operating on casino floors. But none of these changes compare to what they're doing with loss limits. This one has casino executives calling their lawyers. Yet this next provision is so controversial that 2 states have already announced they'll fight it in court. And when you hear the story that pushed legislators to include this in the final bill, you'll understand why this represents the most significant intervention in personal gambling behavior that federal law has ever attempted. Revelation number 5. The Integrated Loss Tracking Requirement. Starting January 2026, every slot machine in America must be connected to a casino-wide player tracking system that actively monitors your losses in real time. Here's how it works. When you've lost $500 in a single session at any machine, the screen must display a mandatory warning message informing you of your total losses. At $1,000 lost, Yet the machine requires a 30-second mandatory pause before you can continue playing. You can't bypass it. You can't click through it. You sit there for 30 seconds looking at your loss total. And at $2,000 lost in a single session, the machine completely locks, and you must physically leave that machine for 10 minutes before the system allows you to continue. The technical implementation requirements are staggering. This mandates complete casino-wide system integration that tracks every dollar wagered and lost across every machine on the property. For tracked play using a player's club card, the system is relatively straightforward, but here's where it gets complicated. For untracked play, the law requires either facial recognition technology or some other biometric identification method to ensure players can't simply move to a different machine to reset their loss counter. Industry estimates put the compliance cost between $50,000 and $200,000 per casino property, depending on size and existing infrastructure. But here's the story that made this provision politically untouchable during the legislative process. In early 2024, a man named Robert Chen testified before a congressional subcommittee about his mother's experience at a tribal casino in Oklahoma. His 72-year-old mother had received $47,000 from her late husband's life insurance policy. According to Robert's testimony and the surveillance footage his attorney subpoenaed, she spent the entire amount across 6 consecutive hours at a bank of Buffalo Gold machines. The casino knew her identity through her player tracking card. Their system watched her make withdrawals from 3 different ATMs on the property. Slot attendants walked past her machine dozens of times. Casino hosts knew exactly how much she was losing because their computers tracked every spin. Not one person intervened. Not one employee said anything. She walked out of that casino having lost her husband's entire life insurance payout, and the casino's position was that she was an adult making her own choices. Robert's congressional testimony lasted 40 minutes, and according to multiple legislative aides who were present, his account of watching his mother's financial devastation unfold on surveillance footage while casino employees did nothing changed the entire tone of the debate. 3 former slot floor attendants testified in the same hearing, and all 3 stated they had witnessed similar situations at least monthly throughout their careers, but had zero authority to intervene and faced discipline if they tried. Now, you might be wondering how casinos are responding to all of this, and what I found out from industry insiders will shock you. I spent the last 3 months talking to casino executives, gaming commissioners, and industry consultants under conditions of anonymity, and here's what they're not telling the public about their implementation strategy. Some of what they're planning to do might actually make things worse for players. It and the loopholes they've already identified reveal exactly how this industry thinks about regulation. Industry strategy. Number 1. The denomination shift. A former casino operations director who managed floor configurations at a major regional chain showed me internal strategy documents that outline their primary response to the mandatory loss limit system. The plan is elegant in its cynicism. They're shifting their entire floor composition heavily toward penny and 2-cent denomination machines. Here's why this matters. The loss limits trigger at specific dollar thresholds, $500, $1,000, $2,000. But those thresholds have nothing to do with time spent playing or number of spins. If you're betting $1 per spin, you hit that first $500 warning in 500 losing spins. Yes, but if you're betting 1 cent per spin, you'd need 50,000 spins to reach that same threshold. Same amount of time sitting at the machine, same psychological engagement, same dopamine manipulation. But the regulatory intervention gets delayed dramatically. According to manufacturing data that leaked from IGT's 2025 production schedule, major slot manufacturers have already increased penny slot production by 40% specifically for the 2025 to 2026 installation cycle. They're not even hiding it. Industry strategy number 2, the bonus obfuscation response. Remember that requirement to display bonus trigger frequency? Casino floor strategists have already found the workaround. They're prioritizing machines with what they call variable trigger systems, where the bonus frequency genuinely changes based on progressive meter levels or mystery feature components. This allows the disclosure to read, bonus trigger frequency varies based on game state, instead of providing any specific number. technically compliant with the law, completely useless for player decision-making. A game designer consultant who worked on 3 major titles launching in late 2025 confirmed that manufacturers received explicit guidance to build in this variability, specifically to avoid meaningful frequency disclosure. Industry strategy number 3, the pre-implementation purge. This is happening right now, today, while you're watching this. Casinos are systematically removing their highest returning machines from the floor before the RTP display requirement takes effect. A former slot director at a 15-property regional casino corporation stated directly that management issued orders to remove anything above 92% RTP from their floors before January 2026. The strategic thinking is brutally simple. Once the law requires RTP displays, players will see whatever numbers exist and accept them as normal, because they'll have no reference point for what used to be available. But the casino industry's largest investment isn't in compliance technology or floor reconfigurations. Public lobbying records show they've spent $12 million in the last 18 months specifically targeting modifications to this law, and they have 3 concrete goals. Extend the implementation deadline from January 2026 to sometime in 2027. Remove the facial recognition requirement for tracking untracked play, and increase those loss limit thresholds from $500, $1,000, and $2,000 to $1,000, $2,500, and $5,000. 2 separate amendments incorporating these changes are currently pending in House committee votes. So here's what you need to know right now, because the next 18 months represent the most critical period for anyone who gambles regularly. We're 18 months away from the biggest structural change in casino gambling regulation in 30 years, and what I need you to understand right now is how every single piece of information I've shared connects to decisions you might make in the next year and a half. Let me pull this together and tell you exactly how this affects you, because the timeline matters more than most people realize. Starting January 2026, 5 fundamental changes take effect simultaneously. Every machine displays its actual return-to-player percentage where you can see it while playing. Every progressive jackpot shows the exact percentage of your wager that actually contributes to that climbing meter instead of going straight to casino profit. Bonus trigger frequencies become transparent, so you know you're chasing a feature that hits once every 300 spins instead of guessing. Near-miss programming gets banned, so machines can't show you jackpot symbols landing one position off the pay line 8 times more often than probability would produce naturally. And loss tracking systems actively intervene when you hit $500, $1,000, and $2,000 loss thresholds in a single session. But here's what this means for you right now. It's between today and January 2026, while casinos still operate under the old rules. They're systematically removing better-paying machines from their floors. Anything returning above 90% is disappearing right now, specifically because once the disclosure requirements take effect, players will see whatever remains and assume those numbers represent normal. The current moment represents your last opportunity to play higher return machines before they vanish permanently. But it's also the last period where you won't see exactly how bad the remaining machines actually are. After the law takes effect, you'll watch that screen tell you this machine returns $86 for every 100 you wager, and that number will become your new baseline normal. If you gamble occasionally for entertainment, but the loss limit interventions genuinely protect you from catastrophic single-session losses. If you gamble regularly, prepare yourself for transparency shock when you see actual contribution percentages on progressives you've been playing for years. If you chase jackpots specifically, prepare to discover how little of your money actually funds the prize you're pursuing. A gaming industry analyst quoted in last month's Casino Enterprise Management publication predicts 10 to 15% slot revenue decline in the first year after implementation. That scale of revenue loss means potential casino closures in marginal markets, job losses in gaming communities, reduced tax revenue for states dependent on gambling income. The economic ripple effects extend far beyond individual player decisions. But here's the final revelation that should disturb you most. Multiple former casino executives I spoke with believe the industry might actually benefit long-term from these transparency requirements. Short-term revenue pain, absolutely, but the regulations legitimize gambling in public perception, by making it appear safer and more controlled. Loss limits prevent the catastrophic financial destruction stories that generate bad press and political pressure for even harsher restrictions. One former VP of casino operations told me directly, "We're taking short-term pain for long-term regulatory stability." The cruel irony embedded in this entire law is that regulations designed to protect players might ultimately entrench the industry by making gambling seem responsible and transparent when the fundamental mathematics haven't changed at all. But this is information the casino industry spent $12 million lobbying to modify or delay. Subscribe to stay updated as implementation approaches because I'll be tracking every development. Comment below and tell me, do you think this law goes far enough, or should regulations be even stricter? Share this with anyone who gambles regularly because they need to know what's coming. And in my next video, I'm going to show you the specific machines casinos are removing right now before these disclosures are required. You won't believe what they're trying to hide.